I want to start this deep dive with, of all things, the mud.
The mud.
Yeah, I was reading through the source material for today, Ken Follett's The Armour of Light, and, you usually get this glossy kind of BBC drama image of the past.
Right. Clean streets, nice waistcoats.
Exactly, maybe a bit of fog for atmosphere. But the year we're looking at today is 1792, and this specific place, the fictional village of Badford, it's drowning in wet, freezing industrial mud.
It's the defining texture of the entire opening, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're right to focus on it because it sets the physical stakes right away.
Yeah.
We aren't in some fancy drawing room. We're in a turnip field in late autumn, and it's cold, it's wet, the ground is slick, it's dangerous, and it's the primary adversary for the first characters we meet.
Okay, so before we even get to the characters, I need to get my head around the timeline. You mentioned 1792. This isn't just a random year Follett picked out of a hat. I was looking at the French Revolution timeline, and this is getting into the really scary part, right? The terror phase.
It's right on the precipice.
Yeah.
To really understand the tension in this book, you have to understand the geopolitical panic that's happening.
It's just across the channel.
Just across the channel, the French Revolution is in full swing. The King of France, Louis XVI, has been arrested. He's actually going to be guillotined in January of the next year, 1793. The whole French aristocracy is being dismantled, physically and socially.
And that fear is just bleeding over into England.
Bleeding is the perfect word. It's seen as a contagion. The British gentry, the people running the town of Kingsbridge in this little village of Badford, they are absolutely terrified.
I think it's coming for them.
They do. They're reading pamphlets, they're hearing these awful rumors of heads on pikes, and they were looking at their own laborers, the guys working in the fields, and wondering, are we next?
Wow.
So there's this hypersensitivity to sedition. Any little complaint about wages, any gathering of workers, it's all seen through this lens of a potential revolution.
So the atmosphere isn't just, oh, it's raining. It's raining, and the people in charge are paranoid that the people standing in the mud are about to kill them.
Precisely. It turns a simple labor dispute, which is what we're about to see, into what they feel is a matter of national security.
Okay, so let's go into that turnip field. This is the big opening set piece. We've got a group of laborers. They're harvesting turnips. And I have to admit, my knowledge of 18th century agriculture is pretty thin. I kind of pictured guys with hoes. This sounds a lot more like industrial weightlifting.
It is. It's heavy industrial lifting that's just disguised as farming.
Yeah.
They're using these things called corves.
Corves?
Yeah, a corve is basically a massive basket. And when it's full of turnips, which are heavy, dense, root vegetables, it weighs about 100 pounds.
100 pounds. And they're not just carrying them, they're lifting them up into a cart.
Right. And the cart itself is a key piece of technology here. It's this heavy oak flatbed thing. It's got iron-rimmed wheels. And because of that mud you mentioned, the friction is almost zero. The horses are struggling. The men are struggling. It's just a scene of pure physical exhaustion.
I want to pause on the visual of the laborers, specifically Harry Clitheroe and his wife, Sal. The text mentions their clothing, and it really, really stuck out to me. You'd expect, I don't know, peasant smocks, something made of rough spun wool, but it says they are wearing cast-off waistcoats.
Waistcoats never wore out. That's the line that got me, too. It tells you everything you need to know about the economics of the textile industry, which is really the backbone of this whole story. Cloth was incredibly expensive to make.
So a guy like Harry could never afford a new one.
Never. A new coat would cost him months of wages. It's just not possible.
So where do they get them from?
They trickle down. It's a whole secondhand economy. A wealthy merchant buys a waistcoat. He wears it for 5-6 years until the cuffs start to fray. He gives it to his clerk. The clerk wears it until the elbows go through. He then sells it to a secondhand dealer.
And eventually?
Eventually, it ends up on the back of a turnip picker in a field. So you have these men working in the mud, wearing the rotting, stained, ill-fitting velvet of the upper classes. It's a visual metaphor for the entire economy. They're literally wearing the scraps of the rich.
That is just such a grim image. Rotting velvet in the freezing rain. Okay, so we've got the setting. Now we need the conflict. Enter Will Riddick.
The antagonist of our first act. Will is the squire's son. He's about 30 years old. He's broad, he's strong, and he is deeply, deeply arrogant.
And he's supervising the harvest.
He is, but only because the usual factor, the manager, is sick. And Will hates it. He feels it's totally beneath him. He just wants to be back at the manor house eating roast beef.
And it's that impatience that causes the whole disaster.
Impatience combined with just sheer ignorance. There's an older laborer there, Uncle Ike. He's been doing this work for decades. He tells Will explicitly, the cart is full. If you put any more on, it'll be too heavy for the slope.
And Will just ignores him.
He orders them to heap them up. He wants to finish in one trip. He overloads the cart. And now we have to talk about the physics of the brake, because this is the specific mechanical failure that drives the whole plot.
Yeah, how does a brake even work on a cart like that? It's not like it has disc brakes.
No, it's incredibly primitive. It's a wooden block, a brake shoe, that gets pressed against the iron rim of the wheel by a big lever.
So it's just friction, wood on iron.
That's all it is. And Uncle Ike actually warns him about this, too. He points out that the brake pad is worn thin. It's almost gone.
So Will forces them to push this overloaded, dangerous cart up a slick, muddy hill. The horse, a gray mare, is just scrambling for any kind of grip.
And gravity wins. It always does. The mare loses her footing in the mud. The cart immediately starts to roll backward.
So Will created the crisis, and then he completely fails to solve it.
Totally. He panics. He yanks the brake lever.
Yeah.
And just as I predicted, the worn-out wooden pad just snaps.
Snaps! And there's no friction. Nothing.
The cart is now a runaway projectile, just rolling backward down the hill. The men are scattering, diving out of the way. But Harry Clitheroe, he's just in the wrong spot. He either slips or he's just too slow, and the cart tips.
The description of the injury is, it's brutal. I mean, this isn't just a simple broken leg.
No, it's a crush injury. The edge of the cart, loaded with hundreds and hundreds of pounds of turnips, lands directly on his knee. It doesn't just break the bone, it smashes the joint to pieces. The text describes bone fragments literally sticking out through the skin. It's a compound fracture of the worst kind.
In 2024, that's a helicopter ride to a trauma center, emergency surgery, you get some titanium pins, maybe a year of rehab.
In 1792, it's a death sentence. And this brings us to the medical response, which I think we really need to spend some time on, because that highlights just how utterly helpless these people were.
Right. So Sal, Harry's wife, she's there. She sees the whole thing. She's terrified. She sends for the doctor.
Well, she sends for Alec Pollock, but he's not really a doctor, is he? The text calls him a barber surgeon.
And that's a crucial distinction, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. In the 18th century, you had a real hierarchy in medicine. At the top were the physicians, university-educated gentlemen. They diagnosed internal illnesses, usually by, looking at your urine or maybe checking your horoscope. They didn't touch the body.
They didn't get their hands dirty.
Never. If you needed something cut off or a bone set, you called a surgeon. And historically, surgeons evolved from barbers.
Because they had the sharp tools.
They had the razors, the sharp bills.
Exactly. So Pollock arrives with a doctor's bag.
He arrives with a wooden chest that looks more like a carpenter's toolkit. It's full of saws, knives, clamps. He takes one look at the knee, and he gives the diagnosis immediately. You can't set it. The joint is completely destroyed.
So he offers two options, and this is where, our listeners might want to brace themselves a bit. Option one is amputation.
Amputation at the thigh. And you have to remember, this is without anesthesia.
Why does Sal refuse that? Is it just the pure horror of it?
The horror is a huge part of it, certainly. The mortality rate for an amputation like that was sky high because of shock and blood loss. But it's also an economic calculation. Sal is a pragmatist above all else.
What do you mean?
A one-legged laborer cannot work in the fields. He can't earn a wage. If Harry loses his leg, he becomes a permanent burden. He becomes a beggar. But if he keeps the leg, maybe, just maybe, the bones fuse somehow. He walks with a stick. He can still do some kind of work. She is gambling on his economic future.
So she chooses option two, the boiling oil.
The boiling oil.
I have to ask, why? I mean, it sounds like something from a medieval torture manual. What was the medical logic behind pouring boiling oil into a fresh wound?
It goes all the way back to the concept of corruption. They didn't know about bacteria or viruses yet. Germ theory is still decades away, but they knew that open wounds tended to, rot and smell, and then the patient would die of a fever. They called it corruption or gangrene.
So the oil is, a sealant to keep the corruption out?
Exactly. It's a form of cauterization. The intense heat destroys the exposed tissue and creates a scab, a kind of seal that supposedly prevents the poison from entering the bloodstream. It's like a biological weld.
The scene where they do this is just horrific. They heat elderflower oil in a bowl over their little cottage fire until it's bubbling.
And Harry is fully conscious. He might have had a swig of brandy, but that's it. That's all he gets. Alec Pollock then just pours the boiling oil directly into the open knee. The text even describes him rocking the dish to make sure the oil gets into all the crevices under the kneecap.
I can't even begin to imagine the pain.
Harry screams and then passes out. It's a mercy that he passes out. But the real tragedy, the futility of it all, is that it doesn't work.
Of course not.
The shock to his system, the massive blood loss, and then the inevitable infection. It all takes him anyway. He dies a few days later in agony.
And this leaves Sal completely alone, a widow with a 6-year-old son, Kit. And this is where the story shifts from a medical disaster to a social one, because Sal knows exactly whose fault this is.
Will Riddick.
Yeah.
100%.
So she confronts him. And this interaction is so important for understanding the class dynamics at play. She finds him in the fields again. He's out shooting birds. And she asks him, essentially, "You killed my husband. What are you going to do for us?"
And Will's reaction is just chilling. There's no remorse. He doesn't offer money. He actually jokes about it. He says something like, "Why don't you find another husband?"
What?
Yeah, he implies she's attractive enough to just go out and snag another man, as if Harry was just a replaceable part, a cog in the machine that broke.
But then he does offer her something, and this is the moment in the book that made me just gasp out loud. He hands her a dead partridge.
A partridge.
A bird!
Yeah.
He says, "Here, have a bird," as compensation for her husband's life.
It's symbolic on so many levels. First, it's a scrap. It's worth pennies. It's a profound insult to the value of Harry's life. But also, you have to see it from the gentry's perspective. The laborers were almost like livestock. Harry broke. That's annoying for the farm, sure, but it's not a human tragedy. The partridge is him saying, "Here's some meat to replace the meat you lost."
Yeah.
It's that dehumanizing.
And Sal. She's furious, obviously. Does she throw it back at him?
She's too poor to throw food away. And that's the heartbreak of the scene. She hates him, she's burning with indignation, but she takes the bird because she has to feed Kit.
But she doesn't stop there.
No, she goes up to chain of command. She appeals to the squire, Will's father.
And surely the older generation, the man in charge, he must have some sense of duty. You know, noblesse oblige and all that.
You would hope so. But Squire Riddick is a master of what I call bureaucratic deflection. He refuses to help directly at all. He just points her to the system. He says, "This is what poor relief is for."
Okay, we need to unpack poor relief, because this isn't like a government check, right? It's not Social Security.
Yeah. No, not at all. In 1792, there was no centralized welfare state. Welfare was an entirely local affair. It was the responsibility of the parish.
So the church.
Specifically, the church. The church collected tithes and other taxes, and a portion of that money was set aside to keep the absolute poorest from starving to death. But, and this is a huge but, it wasn't a right. It was charity, and it was administered by the local clergy.
Which brings us to the third Riddick brother. We've got the brute son, Will, the callous father, the squire, and now we meet the clergyman's son, Rector George Riddick.
And George holds the purse strings. He's the one who decides who gets the relief money. And this is where religion becomes a weapon. Because Sal and Harry...
Yeah, they weren't the right kind of Christians.
They're Methodists. Correct. And to a modern listener, the difference between Anglican and Methodist might seem like, splitting hairs. But in 1792, this was a massive cultural and political divide. The Anglicans were the establishment, the king, the squire, the bishop. They believed in hierarchy. God puts the rich man in his castle and the poor man at his gate, and that's the natural order.
And the Methodists were challenging that.
They were dissenters. They were a reform movement. They believed in a personal salvation, an individual relationship with God. They preached in fields, not just in fancy churches. They encouraged lay people, ordinary people, to preach. And crucially, they taught the poor to read so they could read the Bible for themselves.
Which sounds dangerous to the establishment.
It sounds terrifying to them. To the establishment, Methodists looked like trouble. They looked like the first step toward that French Revolution we were just talking about.
So when Sal goes to Rector George for help, he doesn't see a grieving widow. He sees a rebellious Methodist.
Exactly. He sees a woman who needs to be brought to heel, put back in her place. He agrees to pay her rent, but mostly because if he doesn't, the squire, his own father, loses a tenant. But he refuses to give her any cash for food. And he demands a price for his charity. He demands control over her son, Kit.
We're going to get to Kit's indenture in just a moment because that is a whole other level of heartbreak. But first, I want to pivot to the economic side of this. Because Sal isn't just a laborer's wife. She's part of this massive industrial machine. She's a spinner.
Yes, and this is where we have to talk about the supply chain. We use that word for, modern logistics, shipping containers, and microchips. But the wool trade in 1792 was this incredibly sophisticated, decentralized supply chain. It was called the putting out system.
How did that actually work?
Okay, imagine a wheel with a hub and spokes. The hub is the clothier in our story. That's the young Amos Barrowfield. He's the businessman. He buys the raw wool. Then he rides out to the villages, the spokes, and he drops off the wool at all these little cottages. He puts it out to women like Sal.
So she's basically a remote worker.
It's the original work-from-home gig economy.
Yeah.
She spins the raw wool into yarn on her spinning wheel. A week later, Amos comes back. He weighs the yarn. He pays her by the pound. And then he takes the yarn to a weaver to be made into cloth.
But the text says there's a crisis, a yarn famine. Amos can't get enough yarn to keep his weavers busy. Why? What happened?
This is one of the most fascinating bits of historical context for me. It's all about a specific piece of technology, the flying shuttle.
Okay, you have to explain this to me like I'm 5. What is a flying shuttle, and why did it break the entire economy?
Okay, so picture a traditional loom. It's this big wooden frame for weaving cloth. Before this invention, you had to pass the shuttle. That's the little wooden boat that holds the thread back and forth through the warp threads by hand.
Okay.
If the cloth was wide, you actually needed 2 men, one to throw it from the left and another guy on the right to catch it and throw it back. It was slow, laborious work.
Got it. 2 men, very slow.
Then this guy, John Kay, invents the flying shuttle. It puts the shuttle on little wheels and uses a kind of hammer mechanism. The weaver just pulls a cord and whack, the shuttle flies across the loom instantly. 1 man can now do the work of 2, and he can do it twice as fast.
That sounds great. Efficiency, progress.
It is great for the weaver. But here's the math problem it creates. To keep one traditional weaver busy, you needed about 4 spinners working full-time, a 4-to-1 ratio.
Okay.
But now, with the flying shuttle, the weaver is eating up yarn twice as fast. So to keep him busy, you suddenly need 8 spinners.
But the spinners don't have a new machine yet. They're still working at the same speed.
Exactly. The spinning jenny exists, but it hasn't trickled down to the cottages yet. Sal is still using the old single spindle wheel. So suddenly, there is a massive, massive bottleneck in the supply chain. The weavers up in the north, in Yorkshire, where this technology is taking off, they're buying up all the available wool and yarn. They're paying huge premiums.
And the smaller local clothiers like Amos Barrowfield are just left with nothing.
They're being starved out of the market.
So Amos is riding around begging for yarn, and Sal is being squeezed from the other end.
And this explains her desperate poverty. You would think that high demand for yarn would raise her wages. But the price of food is rising even faster because of the war panic with France. So to survive, Sal has to spin for 12, 14 hours a day.
And this is why she needs her son, Kit.
Yes. It's not that she wants to exploit her child. It's not that at all. But she literally cannot spin fast enough if she has to keep stopping to card the wool. Yeah. That is, comb it all straight before you can spin it.
So Kit does the prep work.
She needs Kit to sit there for hours and card the wool so she can keep the wheel turning constantly. If he stops, the money stops. And if the money stops, they don't eat. It's that simple.
It's a brutal, brutal equation. And speaking of brutal equations, let's talk about Amos Barrowfield. We've established he's a clothier, he's young, only 19, and he's trying to keep his father's business alive in this crisis.
And he's walking into a complete trap. This is the second major plot thread that gets going. Amos's father, Obadiah, dies very suddenly. A heart failure, most likely brought on by all the stress.
So Amos thinks he's inheriting a business.
He does. He's grieving, of course. But he's also thinking, okay, now I can take over. I can modernize. I can fix things.
And then he opens the ledger. The books.
And he finds out his father has been cooking the books. Or, well, not even cooking them, just hiding the massive losses. The business is completely insolvent. Obadiah had been borrowing money just to pay the weaver's wages. And the man he borrowed from is Alderman Hornbeam.
Hornbeam. Okay, so if Will Riddick is the physical villain, the brute, Hornbeam is the corporate shark.
It's a very apt description. Hornbeam is a rival clothier, but on a much, much bigger scale. He's rich, he's a magistrate, he's powerful, and he's absolutely ruthless. He comes to the house while Amos is literally in the middle of grieving. Obadiah's body is still in the house, pennies on his eyes, and he just drops the bomb.
The debt.
100 pounds, which is a fortune in 1792.
But it's not just the money. Hornbeam reveals he has a contract. And the contract states that if the loan isn't repaid immediately upon Obadiah's death, Hornbeam has the right to seize the entire business.
The whole thing. The stock, the tools, the customer lists, the weaver's contracts, everything.
So it's a hostile takeover that was engineered from the very beginning. Hornbeam knew Obadiah would fail. He was just waiting for him to die.
Exactly. He was a predator. And he gives Amos 4 days. 4 days to find 100 pounds or lose everything and become destitute.
I feel like we need to clarify the stakes for Amos here. In modern times, if you inherit a bankrupt business, you just declare bankruptcy. You walk away. You don't go to jail for it.
But in 1792, debt was criminal. If Amos accepts the inheritance, he accepts the debt. If he can't pay, he doesn't just lose the business, he could literally end up in debtor's prison.
Which was a real prison.
Real prison, a literal cage. Or, as an alternative, he would have to work for Hornbeam, but effectively as an indentured servant to pay it all off.
Yeah.
He would lose his freedom.
So he's desperate, and in his desperation, he goes to the girl he likes, Jane Midwinter. He's hoping for more support, a loan.
He's hoping for a partner, I think. He's totally infatuated with her. She's the daughter of Ken Midwinter, who's a prominent local clergyman. But Jane is incredibly pragmatic. This scene is actually painful to read. He asks her to walk out with him, which is basically the 18th century way of asking someone to date, and she just shuts him down cold.
She says something like, "I can't eat hopes."
I don't want to grow fond of a boy who has nothing to offer but hopes. It sounds so harsh to our modern ears. But you have to remember the position of women back then. Jane has no career path. Her only financial security is through marriage. Marrying a bankrupt boy would be social and economic suicide.
And she already knew about the debt.
She did. She reveals that her father had told her, which just twists the knife.
That's a small town for you. Everyone knows your bank balance before you do. So Amos is completely alone. He's been rejected, and he's facing total ruin. Who saves him?
The Methodists.
This was a twist I really didn't expect. Why do the Methodists care about a clothier's business loan? Amos isn't a preacher or anything.
No, but he is one of them. And this goes right back to what we were saying about the Methodists being outsiders. Because they were excluded from the establishment, they couldn't go to Oxford or Cambridge, they were looked down upon by the Anglicans, they developed this fiercely tight-knit network. It was a mutual aid society.
And this is where David Shoveler comes in, also known as Spade.
I love Spade. He's a weaver, and a highly skilled one. He makes the expensive high-end cloth. He's also a deep believer, a committed Methodist. And he realizes that if Hornbeam, who is an Anglican and hostile to their community, takes over Amos's business, all the Methodist weavers will suffer. Hornbeam will squeeze their wages or fire them outright.
So Spade organizes a bailout. It's basically 18th century crowdfunding.
It is.
Yeah.
It's exactly that.
Yeah.
He goes to Ken Midwinter, who is Jane's father, an Anglican but very sympathetic to the Methodists, and gets him to anchor the fund with a large contribution. Then he goes door to door to the other Methodists. 5 pounds from the grocer, 10 pounds from the farmer. They pool all their resources.
It highlights such a profound contrast. When Sal went to the Anglican establishment, the Riddicks, she got a dead partridge and her son taken away. When Amos goes to the Methodist community, he gets a financial lifeline.
That's the core theme that Follett is exploring here. The system, the official power structure, protects the rich. The community, the grassroots network, protects its own.
The scene where they actually pay off Hornbeam is incredibly satisfying to read.
Oh, it's a great showdown.
Yeah.
And Spade is smart about it. He doesn't just hand over a bag of cash. He drags Hornbeam before another magistrate, a justice of the peace named Alderman Drinkwater, to officially witness the transaction.
To make sure there's no trickery.
Exactly. He forces Hornbeam to sign a receipt and a document formally releasing any claim on the business. It's all done legally and publicly.
Hornbeam must have been absolutely furious.
He's livid. You could feel it coming off the page. He thought he had the business in the bag, but he can't refuse the money. It's legal tender. He's been outmaneuvered.
So Amos is saved, but, and this is a big, but he isn't really free, is he?
No, not at all. He now owes that £100 to his neighbors, to his friends, to the people in his church. He has a 10-year repayment plan. He's arguably under more pressure now than he was before because he absolutely cannot let down the people he sees every single day. He has, to use the book's title, put on the armor, but that armor is incredibly heavy.
Okay, let's jump back to Sal and Kit. Because while Amos is getting this community bailout, Sal's family is being systematically dismantled by the establishment. We mentioned the rector demanded Kit's labor.
Yes. The rector frames it as a way to relieve the burden on the parish. He decides that Kit, who is only 7 years old, must go to work at the manor house. He is indentured.
Indentured. That's such a polite-sounding word for what is essentially a form of slavery, isn't it?
It's temporary slavery. That's exactly what it is. He's legally bound to the squire until he turns 21. He cannot quit. He gets no wages, just his food and board. If he tries to run away, he can be arrested, brought back, and whipped.
The separation scene is just gut-wrenching. Sal walks him up to the manor. She gives him a piece of toast with honey, which is this incredibly rare treat for them, as a goodbye gift. And then the door closes, and he's gone.
And Kit enters a completely new world, the manor house. For a boy who grew up in a one-room wattle-and-daub hut with a dirt floor, This place is like landing on an alien planet.
The architecture itself is a total shock to him.
Right. He's used to doing everything in one single room. Cooking, sleeping, working. The manor has rooms just for eating. It has rooms just for playing billiards. It's a spatial display of unimaginable wealth. And he enters this strict hierarchy of the downstairs.
The servant class.
Flat's the butler, Mrs. Jackson the cook. They're strict, but they aren't cruel to him. They feed him. There's a scene where he gets to eat pork pie, and it's probably the best, most savory meal he's ever had in his life. The real danger isn't downstairs. It's upstairs.
Will Riddick again?
Will is a constant menace. There's this terrible scene where Kit and a young maid, Fan, are cleaning Will's bedroom. They accidentally drop a chamber pot. It shatters. It makes a mess. Will catches them. And his reaction is just immediate, brutal violence.
He whips them.
With a riding crap. A grown man viciously beating a 7-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl over a spilled pot. It's visceral. And it emphasizes that inside the walls of the manor, the law basically stops. A master could beat a servant, and unless he actually killed them, no one would bat an eye.
But then we see a crack in the Riddick family's cruelty. Roger Riddick.
The youngest son. Roger's a fascinating character. He's a university student. He's reading all the new philosophy, Rousseau and Locke. He represents the Enlightenment. He walks in, sees Will beating the children, and he stalks it. He physically intervenes.
He calls Will a stupid great ox.
He does. And it's a moment of huge relief. But it also shows you how arbitrary safety was for someone like Kit. He isn't safe because of a law or a right. He's safe because the good brother just happened to walk into the room at that exact moment. If Roger had been out hunting, the beating would have just continued.
And that ever-present danger culminates in the accident with the horse, Steel.
Steel is Will's new hunter. A massive, powerful, high-spirited horse. Kit is terrified of horses, which is completely understandable, since a horse-drawn cart killed his father. Will, knowing this, forces Kit to help him mount the horse.
So Will is yelling at him, the horse is getting skittish.
And Kit slips. Again, it's the mud, or in this case, manure. He slips and falls right behind the horse's legs. The horse rears and kicks out.
Ma'am.
Kicks right in the head. It's a direct mirror of the opening scene. Will's arrogance and negligence leads to a Clitheroe getting a head injury. But the aftermath is completely different. And this is where the class lines get really blurry and interesting.
Because Roger is there again.
Roger is there. He scoops Kit up and carries him inside. But he doesn't take him to the servants' quarters in the attic. He takes him to the guest bedroom.
A servant in the guest bed? That must have been scandalous.
It's a total subversion of all the social norms. Kit wakes up in this soft bed with clean sheets and flowered wallpaper. Alec Pollock, the barber surgeon, is called again, but this time there's no boiling oil. He diagnoses a cracked skull, and he prescribes Godfrey's cordial.
Which is, let me guess, opium.
Laudanum. It's an opium syrup. It was the aspirin of the 18th century. They gave it to everyone, even colicky babies. So Kit spends the next few weeks in this opium haze, recovering in absolute luxury, being cared for by Fan and by Roger.
It's such a strange, contradictory interlude. He's a prisoner, a servant, but for a short time he's living better than he ever has in his life.
It shows that the resources to help these people, the soft beds, the medicine, the good food, they all exist. They are just locked away behind that class barrier. Yeah. The scarcity is artificial.
Exactly. The system can be humane, it just chooses not to be. So while Kit is recovering, there's one last major plot thread we need to weave in, and it involves the church, again, and education. We meet a new character, Elsie Latimer.
The bishop's daughter. She's 20 years old. She's idealistic. She's read all the right books, and she wants to start a Sunday school.
Now, Sunday school today sounds so harmless. It sounds like crayons and Bible stories. But in 1792, this was a radical, even dangerous idea.
Extremely radical. Because Sunday school meant teaching poor, working-class children how to read. And her father, Bishop Latimer, is dead set against it.
Why? What is so dangerous about literacy for the poor?
It's all about information control. The bishop explicitly links reading to the French Revolution. His argument is this: if you teach a laborer to read, he won't just read the Bible. He'll read Thomas Paine's The Rights of Man. He'll read seditious pamphlets that are being printed. He'll start thinking he's as good as his master, and then guillotines in the streets of Kingsbridge.
Discontented with their station, that's the phrase he uses.
It's the classic reactionary argument. You keep them ignorant to keep them obedient. Elsie tries to argue from a religious perspective, saying they need to read the Bible to save their souls. She even brings in a prop to prove her point, a little street urchin named Jimmy Passfield.
I love the Jimmy scene. He's pure comic relief. He walks into the bishop's grand palace, smells of the street, and immediately demands sausages.
I was promised sausages. He has absolutely no reverence for the situation. He doesn't know who Jesus is. When the bishop asks him about the Lord, he thinks he means a local man who owns a barge.
And Elsie's point is, look, these children are basically heathens. We have a duty to teach them.
But the bishop isn't moved by the heathen argument. He's far more scared of Jacobins than he is of heathens. So Elsie realizes she needs a different kind of weapon, a battering ram. And she calls in our friend Spade.
Spade. He weaves all the threads together here, doesn't he? Literally and figuratively.
He does. He comes to the bishop's palace under the guise of selling fine cloth to the bishop's wife, Arabella. But his real mission is to get the Sunday school approved.
So how on earth does a weaver manipulate a bishop?
He's brilliant. He plays on the bishop's tribalism and his territorialism. He knows the bishop absolutely hates the Methodists. So Spade, who's a Methodist himself, argues, "My lord, if the Church of England doesn't start a Sunday school, you know who will? The Methodists will, and they will steal the hearts and minds of the next generation right out from under you."
That is genius. Better we brainwash them than let the enemy brainwash them?
Exactly. He frames literacy not as a charity, but as a weapon the church needs to seize to maintain its power. And the bishop, moved not by compassion, but by fear of losing his congregation, finally agrees.
And while he's doing all this political maneuvering, he's also selling Arabella this coat. And the text spends a lot of time describing the cloth.
It does. This blend of earthy red and dark mustard yellow, a mix of silk and the finest merino wool. And we have to pay attention to the cloth, because it is the physical product of all this suffering and labor we've seen.
It connects everyone.
It does. Sal spun the wool for it, Spade wove it, his sister Kate tailored it. And now the bishop's wife is essentially stroking it and wearing it. The sweat from the turnip field and the spinning wheel ends up as a luxury good on the back of the woman sipping tea in the palace.
And Spade knows this. He uses that cloth to seduce Arabella platonically into supporting the school. He says something like, "I know what pleases a woman." He understands that desire, whether it's desire for a beautiful coat or for power, is the lever you have to pull to get things done in this world. So, as we start to wrap up this first deep dive, let's just look at the board. We have Amos, who's been saved by his community but is now carrying this crushing weight of debt. We have Sal, widowed, impoverished, working herself to the bone. We have Kit, indentured but strangely recovering in the lap of luxury at the manor. And we have Elsie starting a school that might accidentally start a revolution.
It's an absolute powder keg. All these different lives have crashed into each other.
And the fuse is the Industrial Revolution. Is that the threat?
The fuse is double-ended, I think. On one side, yes, it's industry. The machines are coming. The spinning jenny is on the horizon. And that's going to destroy Sal's livelihood even further. But on the other side, the fuse is the war. The militia is being called up to fight France. The press gangs are coming for the young men. The whole society is about to be put under immense strain.
So what a word here for the listener. Why does this story from 1792 matter, beyond just being a good story?
I think it matters because it exposes the incredible fragility of progress. We look back at the Industrial Revolution as this great leap forward, and in terms of GDP, technology, national power, it was. But for the people actually living through it, for Sal, for Harry, it was a catastrophe. There was no safety net, none.
The only safety net was each other.
That's it. The system failed them. The law failed them. The established church failed them. The only thing that worked, the only thing that offered any kind of protection was community solidarity. Spade helping Amos, Sal fighting for Kit, Roger protecting Kit from Will. That is the armor of light that the title refers to. It's not a suit of metal. It's the idea that in a dark, muddy, cruel world, the only real armor you have is the one you build out of human connection.
That's a powerful place to stop. We've survived the turnip field. We've dodged Better's prison. But the machines are getting closer and the drums of war are getting louder. Next time, we're going to see what happens when that war really comes home to Kingsbridge. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
It's been a pleasure.